Everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 8-game slate for you. It starts at 7 o'clock. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Also drop your home run calls in the comments below. We have a really nice slate today from our core plays. I'll go ahead and do that real quick. For second base, Urias from Baltimore, and from the outfield, Toscar Hernandez from Seattle. Over on FanDuel, I have Toscar, George Springer, and Ian Happ as my core plays there. So let's go ahead and get into the slate, though. It is a pretty interesting slate here. There is one game that has potential weather implications, and that's the Cleveland-New York Yankee game. It does have potential to be delayed or postponed, but it's not a super high likelihood. It's just worth mentioning. Several of the games have some rain in the forecast, but most of them are relatively unlikely. And there does seem to be some discrepancy on who's going to be starting for Seattle today between George Kirby and Logan Gilbert. So whichever one of those guys starts, Kirby is better than Gibson, but both of them are in play on the slate. With that said, let's get into our pitchers. We'll start with Logan Gilbert or George Kirby. Now, Kirby would be a top tier play if he draws a start, but Logan Gilbert is currently a P2 option. He can smash here, but his K rate is solid. I do think he has decent upside, but in a plus matchup. But the right-handed hitters could be his issue on Oakland, so do keep that in mind. Then we'll look at Shohei Ohtani. Now he has big time upside. He's got the best strikeout rate on the slate by a lot. He is facing a team that doesn't strike out all that much, but Ohtani has been pretty unhittable lately, and he's getting a lot of strikeouts, so even if he does give up a couple runs, he should have some viability here. His last game against Oakland, he didn't even do that great, and he still had 18 fantasy points. Now, his price is pretty expensive, so that does make him a little bit annoying to roster, but he is in play here. Moving on to Marcus Stroman for Chicago. Against Washington, he has a lot of upside here against a weaker opponent. He's been a little bit up and down, but he's had a tough slate. And he's been, his K rate isn't ideal though, which is definitely a downside, but his price is a little bit cheap enough that it's very viable. So we'll have to wait and see, obviously what Washington puts in their lineup. The left-handed hitters there will be the better options if you want to go up against them. Then we'll look at Bieber for Cleveland. Now, he's facing the Yankees, but the Yankees are missing several of their good hitters, especially Aaron Judge. So, and the back end of their lineup is pretty rough. The issue here with Bieber is really his K rate, and his price is a little higher than I'd like it to be based on the matchup, but he has some really nice upside as a result of the situation, and the Yankees really just don't have a lot of firepower in this lineup right now, and so he's definitely viable on the slate. Plus, he's got good potential for the win. Dylan Case is facing Minnesota, which is probably a tough matchup for him, but he does have some upside here. He started the season really solid, but he had a buzzsaw the last few games. I look for him to bounce back against a little bit of a weaker opponent, who he did well against the last time he faced them and had 6 strikeouts and didn't give up but 1 earned run. So he has some upside here, but he's a little bit riskier. His price is also not ideal at $10,000, but he is in play as a contrarian option. Then we'll look at Louis Varland for Minnesota against the Chicago White Sox. Now, he's in an interesting spot because he's a Hail Mary call. He's only faced one team so far this season. He had 8 strikeouts. That was the Yankees. He did start 5 games last year, and between the 5 games last year and the 1 start this season, he's had 3 good starts that are at least 19 fantasy points and 3 bad starts that were under 10. So he definitely has some high risk, high reward, but his price is cheap enough that he is worth a flyer as a Hail Mary call and a GPP on a contrarian perspective. Then we'll look at Alex Manoah for Toronto against Boston. He has some interesting upside here. Now, I do like Boston quite a bit today, and the left-handed hitters are definitely going to have good potential here. But he has faced Boston 4 times last season, and his worst game was 19 fantasy points, and he's priced down pretty good. He averaged 25 fantasy points against them last year, and he's got good stuff sometimes. He has 30 fantasy point potential in certain situations, and while this game does seem like a tough situation for him, he definitely has good upside potential. My stacks for today's slate are Milwaukee, Colorado, Toronto, Baltimore, and Chicago Cubs. Colorado's kind of like a Hail Mary stack, but Milwaukee, Toronto, and Baltimore are top-tier stacks, and then Chicago Cubs have some weaker upside. there. Moving into the catchers, we're going to start with William Contreras for Milwaukee. He's not priced down like he has been, but he is viable on the slate. He has big time potential here. The wind is also going to be going out into center field in this game, which really gives it even more advantage. I mean, if you needed more advantage in Colorado, I mean, then there you go. Milwaukee is a good stack on this slate. It is going to be somewhat hard to roster them because they're pretty priced expensive, but they are viable. Adley Rutschman is a contrarian option off of him. He's hitting the ball really well, and he's got good upside home run potential. Alejandro Kirk is a good value play for Toronto. He's got some good upside here. He's the best value play for the position when it comes to the home run potential and stuff like that. He hasn't hit the ball all that great in the last few games, but he's got some potential anyway. Tom Murphy is kind of a Hail Mary play. He hasn't hit the ball well to start the year. He's only played in a handful of games, though, and he does have home run potential in this situation. His ISO is off the charts for this matchup, so I definitely like the upside. Seattle is a kind of a sneaky stack as well on this particular slate. Vlad Jr. for first base is a high expensive play, but he is viable on this one. He's got good potential, and while he hasn't had too many big games last 5, he does have massive potential every time he steps out to the plate, and he's got a great matchup here. Vinny Pasquantino for Kansas City is in a risky situation, but he's hitting the ball well, and he's scoring fantasy points, and that's what we like to see. He's got good potential in this matchup, and he has home run metrics for this situation. Brandon Belt also in play for Toronto as a Hail Mary play. High risk, high reward, but if he draws a start, he's definitely worth taking a look at from that perspective. Josh Naylor is a good contrarian option off of Pasquantino or Vlad as a good Hail Mary, not even a Hail Mary, but just an alternative home run hitter who is in a great matchup for his potential. I really like him and Pasquantino about the same, so you can kind of flip either one of those guys into your lineup. Or Jorge Polanco for Minnesota is also in play here. He's got some nice utility. He has hit the ball really well to start his season, and I look for him to continue that here and a good matchup. Ramon Urias is a core play here. There's really just not much at second base and third base, second base to really choose from, other than Polanco, who's pretty expensive. And Urias is hitting the ball decently well. He's just not necessarily the biggest power play, but he does have good potential here, and he's hitting the ball well enough to make him worthwhile if he draws a start. Valdez for Boston is also a Hail Mary play. He's high risk, high reward, but he's super cheap, and he's definitely in play as a potential home run hitter in this particular situation. Then we'll look at Rafael Devers for Boston, who has some nice upside here, though he's expensive, and he hasn't hit the ball all that great. He's kind of boom or bust right now, but he does have that home run hitting potential, and so he's viable on the slate. Gunnar Henderson is also available at third base or shortstop. He is viable here. He is priced higher than I'd like him to be, but he's definitely in play. Eugenio Suarez is an interesting factor here for third base. He's been not hitting the ball particularly well, but he does have big time potential occasionally, and this is a matchup where he just looks like he's jumping off the charts. I really do kind of like a sneaky Seattle stack today. And then Mike Brazeau, if he does draw the start here, he will definitely have some viability. This is a nice plus matchup in Colorado. He didn't start yesterday, so I look for him to start back today against Freeland, and I look for the runs to come flowing for them. He's a great option to get in there for a stack. Gunnar Henderson is also in play today, though he's high risk, high reward. He hasn't hit the ball very well. He can play this position and shortstop as well. Tovar is also the other option at shortstop. He is boom or bust potential here. He does have home run potential. He does hit the ball better at home than on the road, just like most Colorado players. I look for him to have a great matchup here. Moving in the outfield, we'll look at Mike Trout, who is super expensive, but he is viable. He's got home run potential in this one, and I really like the metrics for him. Toscar Hernandez is a core play. He is a near must play on the slate. He does have boom or bust potential, but man, when the metrics hit all the right spots, then you always want to roster him, and he's actually come down in price a lot due to his batting average. He's got home run potential in this one, though he does have strikeout potential as well. Chris Bryant is also in play today at $5,900. He has good potential here. A little bit riskier than some of the other options, and he's obviously pretty expensive, but he is in play. Yoshida for Boston has become a top tier play. He's hitting the ball near the 300 yard average, and he's got home run potential. He's hitting the ball in every game, and he's been a really solid player lately. It's also not striking out very much. Then we'll look at AJ Pollock for Seattle. Another option from the Seattle game. Another guy that's not hitting the ball particularly well, but has home run potential, and you can definitely do a kind of a streaky stack for them. Randall Grichuk for Colorado. If he draws a start today, he started the season really solid with 3 straight games with 2 hits. And so if he can continue that streak here, which he should be able to, I think he has some nice potential here. Eloy Jimenez, he hadn't hit the ball well to start the year, but he's starting to get going the last few games. He's had 3 straight games over 11 fantasy points, and he's got some viability here, starting to see the ball really well. Taylor Ward is also in play here. For the Angels, he has some nice upside here. Another guy who hasn't hit the ball well this season, but has good potential in this matchup. And then Ian Happ, who I really like today as a home run call. He is a little pricey here on FanDuel, on DraftKings, but he's cheap on FanDuel. He is viable on the slate with a home run potential. So that's what I have on DraftKings. Let's go ahead and move over to FanDuel. Obviously, my core plays over there are Toscar, George Springer, and Ian Happ. As for the pitchers, I do think Ohtani is probably the way to go. He definitely has the most upside here. He's got big time potential. But if you wanted to look at Seattle's pitcher, whoever it is, Gilbert or George Kirby, I like Kirby a little bit better, but if Gilbert draws the start, he's also in fine play today. He's a little bit expensive, but he's not super expensive. Shane Bieber is also in play for Cleveland against the Yankees, though he doesn't have the upside that Ohtani has. He's a little safer. And then Dylan Case is a cheaper option who you could pay down some for in a riskier situation, but he has really good upside as well. So that's pretty much what I have for those positions. Moving into the catcher and first base, we really just have 3 guys to consider here, and William Contreras being one of them. A lot of times you don't use catchers on FanDuel, but today might be a good time to do so with the Brewers playing in this nice plus matchup. I definitely like his potential. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is expensive, but he's viable, has really good potential here. He is hitting the ball pretty solid to start the year. And then Josh Naylor is a good play as a contrarian option. He's also a guy you could put in that utility spot, and he's super cheap, which helps pay up for some other utility options. Moving into Polanco at second base, I really like his upside in this matchup, and his price is pretty fair here on FanDuel, and so that gives him some viability. Urias is also in play for Baltimore here. He's actually hitting the ball better than I expected him to this season, and he's got some good upside here. He's not a giant, fantasy point scorer, but he's a guy that's cheap and helps you pay up for some other options. Rafael Devers is also in play. He has some nice upside here. He's got a good matchup, and he's high risk, high reward. Jose Ramirez is a good contrarian option for Cleveland. He's got a great matchup here, and he's hitting the ball pretty solid as of late. He's also got home run potential. Then we'll look at Gunnar Hernandez, who has some utility here at third base, shortstop, and he has been hitting the ball better the last few games. He's had what I mean is he's scoring fantasy points, for that matter, getting some runs and walks and stuff like that. So he's got some viability as a cheap option. Then we'll look at Suarez for Seattle, also in play. Has been kind of boom or bust this season, but he's got a nice matchup, and Seattle looks like a sneaky stack today. And then we'll look at third base, which Gunnar Henderson can be in there, but also Bo Bichette. He is a high-priced play, but he is viable on this one, and he's hitting the ball extremely well lately, and I really like his potential. He didn't start the last. He did get walked a couple times last game, but he definitely has some nice utility here. Moving into the outfield, obviously we have Toscar Hernandez, who is a top-tier option. He's just too cheap for his potential here. He is a boom or bust candidate, but he definitely has big boom potential here today. George Springer is just too cheap here at $2,800. He's got really good metrics for this matchup. Another guy that's not hitting the ball well, but he's got big-time potential. Then Ian Happ, who I also like a lot today. He has really nice utility, and he's hitting the ball pretty solid to start the year. He hasn't been quite as good as I would like, but he definitely has home run potential in this particular situation. We have quite a few other guys that I was going to mention here at outfield, though I do think these three guys are the best. I will mention them real quick. And Mike Trout, Chris Bryant, Masataka Yoshida, AJ Pollock, Charlie Blackmon, Randall Grichuk, Eloy Jimenez, and Stephen Kwan are all in play today. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.